Wii Wonders!
Welcome, wonderful watchers, to Wii Wonders Season 1 Finale and Overview. So for those of you who don't know what Wii Wonders is, so I'm a little confused why you clicked on this video then, Wii Wonders is a Nintendo Wii game review series that I, Souldin of the Grin brothers, a Let's Play channel, have been doing for, uploading wise, since March of this year. In terms of actually recording wise, back in summer of 2019? Yeah, about then was when I started recording all this sort of footage, and, I've actually been uploading Nintendo Wii game reviews. I decided to break up the Nintendo Wii game reviews into seasons, and the first season was dedicated to launch titles of the Nintendo Wii, with one exception, but I'll explain that in a sec. And for this video, I've finally uploaded the whole first season of Wii Wonders. I do a minimum of 10 games per season as the idea, and there's the occasional exception based off of a game that I happen to have been doing on the Let's Play side of things with my brother, the Grin brother side of things as it were, and decided the focus of Wii Wonders has been to, in reviewing these games, has been to recommend certain games for specific types of people, rather than judging it on terms of a personal preference or in terms of objective quality sort of thing. Because regardless of the quality of a game certain game will be suited to certain people. Some games are amazing, but they don't appeal to me, personally. And some games are not that good, but there's certain things that happen to appeal to me. And likewise, certain games are more suited to those who have a arcade mentality of trying to get high scores, but those same sort of people won't enjoy other types of games. So that's kind of where I focused with the reviews of Wii Wonders. And so this Wii Wonders overview is to just look through the 11 games I covered in Wii Wonders Season 1 and rank them in terms of personal preference, as well as to, first and foremost, just share my thoughts in terms of the overall process of, doing Wii Wonders, what have I felt doing this review series and doing, reviewing 11 Nintendo Wii games was kind of what I wanted to cover. For if you're interested, of course, you'll see probably via that little eye thingy YouTube has a link to the Wii Wonders playlist, so you can check out the reviews I've done of these Nintendo Wii launch titles, and one exception again. So then, my overall thoughts, reviewing Wii games, not so much, both reviewing Wii games specifically and reviewing games is quite a challenge. Like, I was known as Review King Souldin back on the days on fanfiction.net for reviewing fanfics and such, and that has its own sort of challenges to surmount. But oh gosh, recording games for review, you end up recording I have a minimum thing of doing at least 14 hours of a game before I end the review, because I feel 14 hours of a game, you play a game for 14 hours, you should have a good impression of the overall sort of quality of the game. It'd be a little bit worrying if you couldn't recommend a game to someone or not based off 14 hours, but I do a minimum of 14 hours, and I recorded, let's see, about 5 hours of that. And yet, of that 5 hours of 14 hours of playtime that is recorded, only 10 to 15 minutes of it get used for a video. And you never know what ends up actually, what you end up sort of going in, what you need to record. You sometimes end up recording things that don't matter that much, and you then struggle to find a place for it, or there's certain key moments that until you lay a sort of sitting down and writing the review process, or you're sort of looking at your notes, you realize, I don't have a good enough example of this, or this doesn't illustrate my point. Like with the Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess review, one of the first things that came about was that I hadn't actually recorded a single moment of fishing, despite mentioning it as a thing you can do in the game, and so I just had to kind of wing it with a scene this is close enough to fish. They're on a boat, there's water, there's probably fish in that water, so that is quite a challenge. And what I also discovered is with Nintendo Wii games specifically, because I work on the building site, the idea with the reviews is when I come back home, I record for an hour or just play for an hour to get to the playtime sort of thing of these Nintendo Wii games. But when you work on the building site, you're physically exhausted at the end of the day. So going back home and trying to pick up the Wii remote is real draining. And I'm a big fan of motion controls, and this helped reinforce it, even though the motion controls for some of these launch titles were a bit spotty in some cases. Certainly in the case that most of them lack sensitivity options and also sound options. It's a weird thing, but I can kind of understand why sensitivity options were a bit lacking in the launch titles. This was new stuff to them sort of thing. But why were sound options lacking? so many of them lack the ability to adjust the sound properly, and I'm puzzled as to why. And another thing I felt with, like, one thing I learned through the Wii recording is originally I was having a hard time actually putting the pieces together in terms of the review. You know, which videos have what. Like, I'll write up the review and then I'll look over the sort of all the video footage I recorded and I'm like, where on earth do I find that scene? Which part is it in? So now I actually do the smart thing of taking notes for it all. So, oh yeah, I forgot to mention the games I covered in the Wii Wonders. Oh, well, that's a silly episode. Okay, so on screen, I'll just quickly pop up the games that were covered in Wii Wonders Season 1. They are, and this is an order of I reviewed them, The Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess, Kororimpa, Red Steel, Trauma Center Second Opinion, WarioWare Smooth Moves, Dragon Ball Revenge of King Piccolo, Gottlieb Pinball Classics, Elodie's, Super Monkey Ball Banana Blitz, Panya Golf with Style, and Excite Truck. And like I said, you'll see this in order of what I reviewed them. By the end of this Wii Wonders Season 1, I'll have ordered them differently in terms of the order of my preference. You'll also notice that throughout this video that, you know, usually when people do these sort of videos, they have like the Wii one, they'll have their review footage or video footage, you know, commemorating it, all playing on. But for some reason, my laptop's acting up with that. For some reason, it can't handle Nintendo Wii games, yet it can handle Xbox Series X footage. I'm not sure why that's the case. So I'm just going to use the thumbnails that I made for the thing. As you'll also notice, the little sort of artwork of my OC avatar mascot Nanka there. Well, her and the Season 1 cover image was drawn by Pat the Rux. Just figured I'd give him a shout out because, you know, this is commemorating the Season 1 of Wii Wonders. The little chibi icons you'll see doing the sort of story, the gameplay, the controls, and the conclusion artwork, those were done by Star Team 2017, but they'll be appearing again throughout Wii Wonders stuff. Whereas, you know, this will probably be the last time using the, unless I make a callback to it, using the Pat the Rux artwork, but it's been fantastic to have because it looks oh so beautiful and does a great job of referencing various Nintendo Wii games that I have now covered. Anything else to mention about the Wii Wonders Season 1? Well, a lot of these launch tiles, and you may think, well, wait, some of these aren't launch tiles. Well, the way I actually did the selection was I based it off launch windows, so first 3 months, and I didn't just decide to base it off PAL region because I come from the UK, so mine is the PAL releases. I also decided to base off both the Japanese, American, and Australian releases of the Nintendo Wii. So you have a list here comprised of the launch windows, or like the first 3 months of each of those various countries. So, you know, Panga Golf with Style was like a Japanese debut title, but wasn't in other territories. But because it was a launch title in Japan, here it is. WarioWare Smooth Moves for the same reason. And other games weren't Japanese launch titles, but they're here because they were in other regions. And I thought that was a cool thing to do. And it had give it a bit more variety and spruce it up. And you got to see other regions launch games. It's also kind of interesting, you know, just how much of an arcade focus a lot of these have. Like, Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess is really the only adventure one. Everything else is score, score, score. Compete for high scores. Even Dragon Ball Revenge of King Piccolo, which wasn't a launch game, it's just a special exception because me and my brother happen to be doing a Let's Play of it, is here. So yeah, it's been a fun but exhausting experience. Various life matters meant the recording took more time than expected in terms of having to juggle this along with regular recording for the Let's Play side of Grin Brothers, as well as just general things I do on my own time and all that. Trying to find the right time, the right moment, trying to figure out what to record, just trying to play to get to points where I can record a moment which I felt this is more important, or I've already covered too much of this, so I need to progress far enough to actually record something else of value. All quite a challenge. I feel I'm going to be playing Wii Wonders. I've had a real fun time doing this, though. That's definitely sure it should be taken away, and I look forward to doing more Wii Wonders in future. But I feel that I'm going to have a year break in between Season 1 and Season 2 to just have more of a stockpile and to better prepare myself things, because I had no breathing room for if problems happened, which they did, because like I said, the new laptop from Panya Golf with Style just stopped being able to edit videos, but the last 2 games couldn't be edited on this new laptop. I had to edit them on the old laptop, send them over to the new laptop, and I had no breathing room for whenever an emergency like that happened. So I'm going to hopefully stockpile game recordings with and get myself really properly prepared for Season 2. I'm so prepared for Season 2 that I have the artwork ready, which is a heck of a lot in advance now because it's not going to be done until next year. But yeah, that is my overview thoughts on Wii Wonders Season 1. And now, to rank the games that I've played as Wii Wonders by personal preference. So then, this here will be my ranking of each of the games I've played in Wii Wonders so far, which is only one season. But the idea is that when I do like season 2, season 3, I'll put this in this list. I'll put all the games I've then since played in the list with all the other games I've already played, and so it'll just become a bigger and bigger list. And eventually, by the time at some point in Wii Wonders, I'll have like a top 100 Wii games, and then if I apparently do this for the rest of my life, top 1,000. Is there 1,000 Wii games? There could be 1,000 Wii games. That's the thing. So to explain with this ranking, again, it's a personalised list. There are some games which I do recognise objectively are better than I'm going to have them on this list. But this is based off my own personal enjoyment and appreciation. And some of it can come from more than just actually how good the game is. Some of it can come from the theming and settings and just the style of it. You know, so some games have an advantage because I prefer the genre, for instance. Some games have a disadvantage because I'm not a fan of the genre. All that sort of thing. I've separated them into 4 tiers. D tier is I didn't enjoy the game. I don't want to play him again. C tier is it was okay. If someone asked me to play it, I guess I'd play it. You know, maybe I'd dip into it every now and again. B tier is I enjoyed it and I wouldn't mind playing it again. And A tier is I love the game and would look forward to playing the game again. Maybe sort of do it in my spare time or like additional recording sort of thing to pad things out. For D tier, at the very bottom in terms of my enjoyment, at number 11, is Super Monkey Ball Banana Blitz. Yeah, I wasn't a big fan of Super Monkey Ball Banana Blitz. It has some quality aspects to it. I believe I do mention that it works best as a party game, and I stand by that. Because while some of the party games do control a bit rough, the majority control pretty decently, and there's a surprising amount of depth to quite a few. It's good in that multiplayer element. In terms of its main game, though, weirdly enough, the main game suffers the most. The controls are... Not only are the controls too sensitive, but the impact you receive from anything, you know, you tap a wall and you just go flying, you jump and you bounce so much from the jumping that it makes jumping almost suicidal, which is strange when jumping is the new cool mechanic. There were some cool bosses and all, but gosh, the standard levels were just so frustrating. Again, it's why I probably gravitated towards Doctor. He had the most control out of all the characters. And like, there's a few elements where, through almost sheer luck, did I not pass some of the levels. Like, one of these levels, you know, it was like, you're on a 4 sort of ramp sort of thing, and I did everything as you would, but somehow I just must have bounced against something wrong whilst I was rolling down it. Then the second attempt, I tried to slow down, but that just made it so I didn't get enough speed to reach the goal. And third attempt, then, just by sheer luck, I managed to get it done. It was a nuisance. So that way I wasn't a big fan of Super Monkey Ball Banana Blitz. At number 10 is Trauma Center Second Opinion. Now, I know what you may be thinking. You were just annoyed at Trauma Center Second Opinion because you couldn't complete the game because your hands kept shaking from the cold. Well, that's part of the reason. I think it's kind of silly that the game doesn't have sensitivity options to accommodate for that. Particularly in the fact that, you know, it's for a medical game. It doesn't take into account medical conditions or the elderly or such, which I feel could enjoy the sort of game, the style of it and such, you know, if it had those sensitivity options to adapt to that sort of thing. But actually, my main problem with the game is ultimately the story. The fact that they took out the concluding chapter of the original game in this remake / port to the Wii. That is insane. They replaced it with a slideshow. Not even a slideshow, there was like 3 pictures at best. Just walls of text. And I feel the story suffers from elements like Angie, I believe she was, the nurse character. Gosh, she was so unlikable. And they had some interesting points, but the whole terrorist plotline and the more down-to-earth medical drama plotlines didn't really, you know, gel well enough together. Like, it was an interesting thing bringing up the serious topic of euthanasia and that sort of thing, but it feels like the main character of Derek doesn't really have a good point to stand on being against it when he's got medical powers gifted to him by a god. He can stop time with a healing touch. So he's a bit of an unfair position to say, just try harder to cure them. Yeah, you can stop time! But yeah, it was actually the story which ended up dragging things down. And because it's a very text novel styled game, it's a lot of story. Good music, and I like the core gameplay, but lack of sensitivity and the port and the story just kind of irking me, didn't help it. But those are the 2 D tier games where I kind of don't want to return to those. Though both of them ironically have sequels, but hey, maybe their sequels improve on these aspects. In C tier, we have a single game. One game I only felt was okay. And that is at number 9, Gottlieb Pinball Classics. Gottlieb Pinball Classics was a pretty decently made pinball game. It has some nice varied pinball tables, some nice neat little presentation aspects, a little museum tour of the sort of factories, as well as neat little credit things. But it doesn't have much outside of that. And I say praise it for its unique pinball table sort of thing, but you don't actually get to see most of them when you play the sort of main campaign, because you can't change up the order of the tables. You have to do them in a set order. So if you suck at one table, much like I did, I think it was El Dorado, you rarely, it'll take you tons and tons of attempts just to get to see the other tables that you enjoy more, at least in the core gameplay. So, I could probably have actually done a solid high score run of the sort of main Gottlieb Pinball Challenge if, I didn't have to do El Dorado as, the third table, because I struggled with that table in particular. It wasn't exactly like they were sort of, ordered in terms of difficulty, because El Dorado was a lot harder than quite a few of the pinball tables after it. And because of that, it gets very repetitive. It's not the sort of game that's well suited for long, sort of single-day set-down sessions. It's the sort of game you pick up for an hour at most and just have a bit of fun. Oh, some friends are around. You'll have a pinball challenge with each other and Gottlieb Pinball Classic sort of thing. Okay, but that is C tier. That is number 9, C tier. Then we go to B tier, the games I liked. And I'm going to say here, number 8 and number 7, in terms of objective quality, should probably be swapped around with number 6 and number 5. But, personal preference here. Number 8 is Elodies, a game I didn't enjoy at first because, the first few levels are a bit too restrictive. But the more I played for it, and particularly with the later levels, the more I enjoyed the game. The more space they gave me, the more possibilities of where to look. The earlier levels of Elodies, you're in a smaller space, there's less sort of areas you can try out. If you get stuck on one sort of puzzle, or you're struggling to find something, there's not many other alternative areas to check out. Whereas in later levels, you get larger areas so that if you can't find or solve a puzzle in one area, you can go elsewhere and solve or find out things elsewhere in the stage. It's also kind of got that sort of interesting sort of back and forth in that it's a game that really encourages physical manipulation and experimentation, but at the same time the levels are timed. And oh gosh, it's a challenging one, because I could get through the core levels, but a lot of those challenges were nigh impossible for me to complete. For a game appealing to kids, it's got such a high difficulty in its challenge mode, but at least that isn't too much present in terms of the main levels. If you want challenge, it's there, and you don't have to do the challenge. It's not mandatory, so it actually works out well with that. And on the really praise-heavy things, Kai is one of the best protagonists, particularly in terms of child protagonists. He is really well written. And, oh gosh, every cutscene is some of the most amazing art I've ever seen. It looks so beautiful. Gosh, I wish more games had that fantastic art style to it. Number 7 is Kororimpa. I imagine if Rafi was making this list, he'd have it quite higher, because he really enjoyed the uniqueness of Kororimpa. And I must admit, I enjoyed it too. I guess my problem with Kororimpa is Kororimpa has this unique core gameplay and really nails its balanced, challenging aspect, but at the end of the day, that's all there is to it, and it doesn't have enough themes and such to kind of spice up the visual appeal. It has 6 to 7 themes, but they're kind of not spaced out too well. The 7th one, as I mentioned, is only in super hard to unlock 5 stages sort of thing. Maybe some additional themes sort of thing, or some story element could have spiced up a bit more, but it does its core balanced gameplay, and it does it so well. It nails it. Some neat sort of music to go along with it, and some decent options in terms of what marble you want to use to roll through the stage. It just, lacked a bit more to spice it up, but it has the core groundwork so solid. Number 6 is Dragon Ball Revenge of King Piccolo, a game which is kind of interesting because it's not aged as well as I thought it was. It's not as good as I recall it being. But there is still a lot of charm to it in terms of a lot of the sort of Dragon Ball theming. It does well. The treasures reference a lot of the lore. The multiplayer, whilst the multiplayer is a so bad it's good sort of thing, it has a lot of characters you don't usually see in Dragon Ball games, particularly in playable form. It looks really nice, and the core beat-em-up gameplay works well. There is admittedly a problem in that the boss battles are often very cheap, and furthermore, the other problem being that if you try to play through it in terms of trying to both collect the treasures and get an S rank at the same time, you're not going to have a particularly good time, because it's a game where if you're trying to get all the treasures, that immediately limits your ability to get a high time score, which means you're unlikely to get an S rank, but you need to get both those in order to unlock the multiplayer characters. So I found that the best way to actually play the game was do one run through the level once, to look for the treasures. Usually the first time round is bare because you don't know what's going to come up. And then when you've got a better understanding of the level and what enemies you're going to face, go for it, trying to get the fastest time, combo, and health remaining as possible. And doing that immediately improved the game by quite a lot. But yeah, objectively, it's probably below Elodie's and Corrin, but I have a lot of fun with it, and I particularly enjoy the Dragon Ball theme to it, and it's a fun beat-em-up, and I enjoy those. Number 5 is another game which has aged not as well as I'd have liked, and this was really one that I'd been warned about, but at the same time, in replaying it, I've discovered new things about it that I really enjoyed, and that is Red Steel. Like, people warned me about how it's aged, and in particular they'd mentioned the sword combat, but that's the thing, I never liked the sword combat to begin with. I already knew the sword combat was a messy thing that barely worked, that constantly messed up your controls. However, I now know that the sword combat has a ton of cool and unique ideas to it. So many great ideas, they just lack the polish to be executed well. Which is a shame, because, again, they have a good sort of theming going on with it, and a lot of sort of neat sort of things that, if the controls worked better, would be wonderful to see. I'm actually a bigger fan of the FPS aspect, the shooting mechanic aspect, because being able to control your gun with the remote works wonders. It's a bit of a shame there's no radar system. It does make progressing through the level a bit annoying, particularly when you suddenly get sniped out of nowhere by an enemy. But yeah, the core sort of shooting gameplay works really well. And the core game itself, whilst there's a bit of a lull moment at some point, I think the blend of the Tokyo and American aesthetics are pretty cool, particularly in the enemies sort of appearing. And it kind of mirrors the blend of the gunplay and the swordplay in a sense. And I feel like story-wise, it actually gets pretty good from the last act on. Some pretty good... The villain is actually pretty decently done. There's a couple of decent characters, basically what I refer to as sword training girl and gun training guy. It's easy to remember than the names, admittedly. And multiplayer is absolute chaos and so much fun. So, admittedly, objectively, again, it's a bit too rough to really be up here a number 5 spot. But in terms of my overall enjoyment, it is number 5. In terms of me liking it, it is number 5. Again, that's what happens when you're not doing an objective sort of review. You're doing it based off personal opinion, isn't it? And number 4, at the very sort of edge of B tier, it was almost an A tier, but it was just remains in the B tier, is Excite Truck. Excite Truck is simple but fun. It's just carnage. It's a racing game where you don't have to win the race, and that's where you could just win the race by smashing the trucks. It is mayhem, sort of like going full sprint and boosting over hills, flipping your truck out. The fact that you can quickly get back into a race the moment after you crash into something. How quick everything is. You smash, you crash and all that, and you recover so quickly. Like you just immediately pop back into a race. It's amazing how smooth and fluid it all is. There's some decent challenges they throw into the mix, although this game isn't really designed to actually drive properly, so not sure what they're thinking of the gate challenge, where it's like, drive in a proper straight line, you maniacs! They 6 to pretty varied levels, sort of themes for the countries for the courses to be on. They do reuse assets, but I feel they do a good job in terms of placing the assets in different places, changing the angle of the courses, the different power-ups and terrain morphs of where they take effect. So in order to spice up each of them, there's so many vehicles to unlock, and the trophies to unlock feel like really nice achievements, simply because they're just really nice to look at as you flip them around. And it's really cool that you can customize the paint job of every truck you get from the get-go with like a bunch of different colors. So gives it a nice spice to it. I think its biggest drawback, more so than anything, is the fact that it's only 2-player in terms of multiplayer, because this game is so well suited to multiplayer. Because, it's just such a good game to just laugh as you mess up, sort of thing. It's certainly interesting that it's a game where I can say that I rarely got frustrated with it. You fail, but it's never frustrating. It's fun failure. But that was B tier. And so for our final tier, we get to A tier. My top 3 games that I've played of Wii Wonders so far are here. And I'd love to play some more of these games in my spare time. Admittedly, I'm getting new games all the time, so it's a little bit hard to juggle. And hey, maybe I'll record some of it at some point of me playing these games again. Show them off to you if you want to. If you want to see more of them. And number 3 is Panya, Golf with Style. And this was a game I was always curious about playing through, because I've actually played its sequel, Super Swing Golf, and had a lot of fun with it. I didn't know it had a previous entry, maybe because they're a completely different name. I mean, Panya Golf with Style and Super Swing Golf. Wouldn't have thought they were connected. But yeah, Panya Golf with Style. Love the characters to it. Love the sort of like story, just the character interactions. And it's such a visually nice game, looks lovely, and it's a lengthy game that you're gonna be playing it for a long time. There's a lot of content. I mean, it's all stuck in golf. Like, there's nothing really varied outside of the golf. So if you don't enjoy the core gameplay, it's gonna be a bit of a rough time. But I felt the core gameplay and the sort of locations and such were all pretty well done. I will admit that the motion controls don't work nearly as well as its sequel, which is a shame. But the button controls are a good stand-in for it. And like I said, it's cool that, being able to customize your character as well as being able to have to take into account the sort of RPG mechanics of not buffing a certain stats too much, because they'll end up, if you go over a certain threshold, negatively affecting other stats. A good degree of customization in your caddy, your character's clothes and all such. And again, like I said, the character interactions are particularly fun. There's even though, like for instance, the starting characters of Scout and Hannah are pretty plain looking, they're actually pretty funny characters interacting with the others, and generally all the story moments were pretty neat. Very laid back and enjoyable. And whilst admittedly in the main campaign you do nothing but beach stages for the most part, if you go to the other modes, you get to enjoy a lot of the other sort of courses that are available. And there's some pretty neat ones, and it's nice seeing how much the ice and the desert stages and such differ from one each other. Sort of the interesting blend of you've got golf, but then you throw in all these fantasy elements, and the power-up usage is pretty cool with the items. So yeah, I had a real fun time playing with Panga Golfer style. I did get frustrated, but that was because I was pressed for time, and again, like I said, it's a game that you're going to spend a long time playing because it takes a while to actually unlock stuff, because the courses takes, doing a session of golf is, funny enough, a very lengthy experience, and I was a bit pressured for time, but I think I'd have a lot more, even more fun with it now that I'm not having to record it per se. But yeah, Panga Golfer's style is number 3. Number 2 is The Legend of Zelda: Twilight Princess. I'm surprised at how much I enjoyed this game, and in particular how much I enjoyed the story and characters to it. Agatha in particular is absolutely lovely. And just the sheer amount of emotion they display on Link's face in cutscenes. Like, despite how, it's not as emotive and doesn't hold up as well graphically as, say, Wind Waker, I think they actually do a pretty good job with Twilight Princess in terms of having the characters express themselves. Like, the cutscenes are really well done and convey emotions surprisingly well for a game without any voice acting. The core gameplay itself is a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun, in particular, with the Goron mines, the second sort of dungeon, and their creative usage of the Iron Boots was a lot of fun. Wasn't as big of a fan of the Wolf gameplay, more so because they didn't implement any new mechanics to the Wolf Link as you play along. But the moment they allowed you to swap back and forth to the Wolf Link and regular Link, it opened up a whole room of possibilities, and I particularly enjoyed that. Like, it's a really lengthy adventure. I ended up actually doing a lot more side content earlier than most people tend to, having watched a playthrough by the Otaku artist. Really fun playthrough of Legend of Twilight Princess, by the way. You should go check that out. Really fun game. Surprised about just how there's so much to do in it. It's a proper adventure with a ton of content to go along the way, and the dungeons are pretty darn great. The combat is got quite a lot of depth to it, thanks to not only just Link's items, but also the sort of new sword skills you can learn, which really help freshen things up and allowed you to do some pretty cool things. So yeah, really liked The Legend of Zelda: Twilight Princess, which is strange. I did not expect to enjoy it as much as I did. I always consider it like the lowest of my Zelda games I've played, but after playing this, no, it's actually really, really good. And then we get to number 1. In A tier, my number 1 favourite game I've played through of Wii Wonders. Well, if you watched Wii Wonders' whole playlist, you'll already know which game it is, because it's the last one remaining. WarioWare Smooth Moves. It's an absolute delight every step of the way. It is filled with creativity. It is one of those games where when you fail, it's fun. It's fantastic in terms of both single player and multiplayer content. Everything is just so funny, from just the cutscenes, every mini game, the insanity of trying to get yourself prepared for each micro game, the sheer diversity they managed to pull off with the simple controls. Most of these only use one Wii remote, and yet they pull off like so many different forms and functions and such. And again, style wise, it's just brimming with personality and character. It looks great, and yeah, it's just a constant fun game throughout. Yeah, I think, the only thing that really is needed is, giving a bit more time to give the Wii, when multiplayer things, giving the Wii remote to the other player. Because they don't give you that much time to sort of, hey, pass the Wii remote. Yeah, WarioWare Smooth Moves. Yeah, it was just so much fun. It was just such a funny experience. I ended up playing it for a lot more than I probably actually needed to as well. Because I already covered a lot of the content I felt was needed to be done. But, I just kept playing and playing and playing. Just a little bit in my spare time as well. Yeah, it's really hard to sort of play anymore. Because really, at the end of the day, the things to really know is it's just so full of character. It's fun to play, and it's fun to watch, and it's fun to just listen to. It's just general fun. And it puts some of the best usage of a singular Wii remote. Like, they just thought of as many ideas as possible. And they thought of as many ideas as possible in certain functions of the Wii remote. Which was, you hold a Wii remote one way, and they thought of as many ideas of how to use that as possible. So I think there's like at least 15 for every type of form, which is fantastic, really. And they put some uses you'd never expect with a singular form. Just changing up the motion or the timing sort of thing. Those are, by order of personal preference, as you will see here, my thoughts of the Wii games I've played in Wii Wonders so far. Now, I've actually made a top 12 favourite Wii games before I even started Wii recording, which that top 12 favourite Wii games might end up changing through some of the games that are now on this list. But that will happen eventually. I'll make a full-on list. But as I said, this list is going to grow and grow with every season of Wii Wonders, and eventually there's going to be like over a top 100 Wii games, and you'll see them all sort of competing together on one giant list. I'm not sure the YouTube video would actually be able to hold that giant list, but in any case, I hope you've enjoyed me Wii game reviews. I've been having a blast, and I hope to continue doing more of them after admittedly a break to stockpile and record some of it, but hope to continue creating these reviews, as well as to uploading these reviews and seeing your reactions, responses to it. And I hope through this series I've managed to recommend some Nintendo Wii games that you might not have otherwise considered. And I hope you'll be able to recommend to certain people who want specific types of games a Wii game from this list. I hope it manages to help you in terms of purchasing and playing decisions with the Nintendo Wii, and to shine some light on some of these gems that don't get the attention they should. So then, this is the conclusion to Wii Wonders Season 1. Thank you all for watching, and cheerio!
Thank you for watching. Cheerio!